The day my mother forgot my birthday, she remembered to send flowers to my sister. I watched the delivery guy carry a huge bouquet of pale pink roses through the front door, peonies and baby's breath, my sister's favorites. And I stood in the hallway in my pajamas with a cereal bowl in my hand, 32 years old, and I thought, this is it. This is the summary of my entire life. Nobody saw me. I don't mean that in a dramatic, metaphorical way. I mean that my mother looked right through me, handed my sister the card and said, "These are from your Aunt Carol. Isn't that sweet?" And walked back into the kitchen without once acknowledging that it was my birthday, not my sister's, mine. I set my cereal bowl down on the hallway table. I remember the milk sloshing a little over the edge. And I thought, not for the first time, what would it take for someone in this family to actually see me? I didn't know it then, but I was about 3 months away from finding out. Welcome to Big Sky Storytime. I hope you will like this story. Before listening to the story, I request you that if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel and make the video a worthy one. Let's go to the story. Let me take you back, because this story didn't start with roses and forgotten birthdays. It started much, much earlier than that. I grew up in a small town outside of Columbus, Ohio, middle of nowhere kind of place, the kind where everyone knows your business, but nobody actually knows you. My parents had 3 kids, my older sister Renee, me, and my younger brother Caleb. And from the very beginning, from my very first memory, I understood implicitly that the family had 2 stars and 1 extra. Renee was beautiful and charismatic. She walked into rooms and people turned to look at her. She laughed loudly and people laughed with her. She was the kind of girl who became homecoming queen not because she campaigned for it, but because it simply seemed like the natural order of things. Caleb was the baby, the boy, my father's legacy, my mother's miracle. She'd had 2 miscarriages before he was born, and when he finally arrived, healthy, pink, and screaming, my parents treated him like something holy, like he needed to be protected from the ordinary difficulties of life. And then there was me. I wasn't ugly, I wasn't slow, I wasn't troubled. I was just medium. Medium grades, medium looks, medium personality. At least that's how it felt standing next to the brightness of Renee and the preciousness of Caleb. I was the one who made dinner when my mom worked late and didn't get thanked for it. The one who helped Caleb with his science projects but never got credit when he won the school fair. The one who sat across from my father at the dinner table and could go entire meals with him asking me a single question out my day. I remember once, I was maybe 11 or 12, I tried to tell my dad about this short story I'd written in class. My teacher had said it was the best piece of writing she'd seen from a student in years. She'd actually kept a copy of it for herself. I was glowing with pride. I sat across from him at dinner, heart hammering, and said, "Dad, my teacher said..." "Renee," he interrupted, turning to my sister, "tell me about this boy you're seeing." And that was that. He never heard what my teacher said. I never told him again. I learned early that wanting attention in my family was like being thirsty in a house with 1 glass of water, and other people always seemed to be thirstier than me. So I stopped being thirsty. I stopped asking to be seen. I made myself smaller, quieter, easier. I became a person who took up as little space as possible, because I had learned, deeply in my bones, that the space I occupied was always somehow borrowed. I carried that invisibility with me like luggage when I moved to Chicago at 23. New city, new start. I told myself that. I really believed it, but he knows you. Here, you can be anyone. Except the problem with invisibility is that it follows you. It's not a circumstance, it's a posture. It's the way you walk into a room already apologizing for being there. It's the way you speak in meetings with a slight upward lilt at the end of your sentences, as if every statement is really a question, as if you're perpetually asking for permission to have an opinion. I was good at my job, really good. I had a natural instinct for language, for understanding what made people feel something. My campaigns consistently performed above the firm's average. I could walk into a room of data and walk out with a human story. But you know what happened? My boss, a man named Derek, mid-40s, the kind of guy who took credit for other people's lunches, let alone their ideas. Derek noticed I was good, and Derek had a very specific use for someone like me. I became his ghost. Not officially, not on paper, but slowly, systematically, my work started appearing under his name. He'd present my concepts in leadership meetings and say "we" when he meant "she." He'd forward my written analyses to the senior partners with his signature at the bottom. And when those ideas were praised, he'd smile and nod and say, "My team really came through on this one," in a way that made it sound generous rather than what it actually was, theft. I told myself it was normal. I told myself this was just how corporate America worked. You pay your dues, you work hard, eventually you rise. I told myself I was being oversensitive, dramatic, difficult, all the words I'd been taught to fear. And then there was Marcus. Marcus was the kind of man who could make you feel like the most fascinating person in any room, and later you'd realize that was exactly his talent, making everyone feel that way. We dated for 2 years. 2 years of feeling chosen, finally. 2 years of thinking, see, someone sees you. But Marcus saw what he wanted to see. A woman who was low maintenance because she'd been conditioned never to ask for anything. A woman who wouldn't make scenes because she'd been trained to make herself smaller. A woman who would work a full day, come home, cook dinner, listen to his problems, support his dreams, and ask very little in return. I loved him. I genuinely loved him. I loved him the way someone loves water after a long drought, desperately, gratefully, without really questioning whether they deserved it. I didn't see what was happening until the night I found the texts.
I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. His phone was face up on the kitchen counter and a message previewed while I was standing right there. I didn't go looking. I didn't have to. Can't stop thinking about last night, the message read. And the contact name wasn't a coworker or a friend. It was saved as a woman's name. Just a woman's name, plain as anything. I stood there for a long time. The pasta I'd been stirring started to stick to the bottom of the pot. I could smell it burning. I didn't move. Marcus came into the kitchen, saw my face, saw his phone, and this is the part I'll never forget. He didn't even look guilty. He looked inconvenienced, like he was annoyed that this was happening right now, tonight, when he was tired. "Let me explain," he said. "Has it been happening long?" I asked. My voice was so calm, eerily calm. I think I surprised us both. He paused just a half second too long. "It's complicated." I turned off the stove. I set down the spoon, and I said very quietly, "Get out of my apartment. Kara, get out." He left, and I stood in that kitchen alone. And for a moment, just a moment, I thought, this is what always happens to me. I am someone things are done to. I am a supporting character in everyone else's story. But underneath that thought, deeper and quieter and more dangerous, something else was stirring. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Anger. Here's what nobody tells you about women who've spent their whole lives being invisible. When they finally get angry, it is devastating. Not violent, not chaotic, precise, focused, incandescent. Because we've been watching. All those years of fading into the background, we were watching. We know exactly who did what and when and how. Because when you are invisible, you have no choice but to pay attention. The quiet ones always know the most. Remember that. I went to work the next Monday, and something inside me had shifted. I can't fully explain it. It was like a door I'd been leaning against for years had finally been pushed open, and the air on the other side was different. Brighter, colder, more real. Derek called me into his office that morning. He wanted to run me through a new campaign pitch he was preparing for the firm's biggest account. He had notes, my notes actually, from a brief I'd sent him 2 weeks prior, spread across his desk. He wanted me to help him punch it up before he presented it to the partners. I sat down across from him. He talked for about 5 minutes. He talked about his vision, his instincts, his read on the client. He used the word I 14 times. I counted. Then he looked up and said, "So what do you think?" And I said very evenly, "I think you should be careful about presenting this without acknowledging where the ideas came from." He blinked. "What?" "The positioning strategy on page 3, the narrative framework on page 6, the audience segmentation model on page 9. I wrote all of those. You have my name on the original documents. I sent them to you on March 4th, March 11th, and March 19th. I have the emails." The silence was extraordinary. "Kara?" He started with a laugh that was meant to sound warm and came out strangled. "I don't think. I'm not asking you to credit me out of ego, Derek." I leaned forward slightly. "I'm asking you because I've been documenting this pattern for 8 months, and if I don't hear a different conversation happen very soon, I'm going to have a very different conversation with HR." I'd never said anything like that to anyone in my professional life. The look on his face, that stunned, recalculating look, felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years.
I went home that evening and called my mother. I don't know why. Grief, maybe, or some old stubborn hope that she would somehow rise to the moment. "Mom," I said, "I broke up with Marcus." "Oh, honey." A pause. "What did you do?" "What did you do?" Not, "Are you okay?" "What did you do?" "He was cheating on me," I said. "Oh." Another pause. Men do that sometimes when they feel neglected. I held the phone away from my face for a moment. I looked at the ceiling of my apartment. I thought about 32 years, about pale pink roses on someone else's birthday, about a dinner table where my sentences went unfinished, about all the years I'd spent believing that love was something you had to earn by making yourself easy to be around. "Mom," I said slowly, "I have to tell you something." "What?" "I've been invisible in this family my entire life, and I don't think you've ever noticed." The silence on the other end was different from Derek's silence. It was confused, offended. The silence of someone who has never had to consider a reality they didn't construct. "That's not fair, Kara." "It's not," I agreed. "It's really not." I hung up. And then I cried. Not the quiet, apologetic crying I'd done my whole life, the kind where you try not to make too much noise, where you clean up after yourself quickly, where you're almost ashamed to be sad. I cried loudly. Big, ugly, heaving sobs, alone in my apartment, grieving everything I'd never been allowed to grieve. The birthday nobody remembered, the dinner table where I was invisible, the boss who stole my voice, the man who used my gentleness against me, the mother who turned my pain back around on me before I could even land. I cried for a long time. And when I was done, I washed my face. I made tea. I opened my laptop. And I started writing. I've always been a writer. My teacher knew it when I was 12. I knew it. I just never believed I was allowed to take up that kind of space in the world. The kind of space that says, I have something to say and it matters. That night, I wrote the first piece of what would eventually become my newsletter. I didn't know it was a newsletter yet. I thought I was just writing for myself. Some kind of midnight confessional. Raw and unpolished and entirely mine. I wrote about being invisible. I wrote about the experience of being the medium child, the background wife, the uncredited employee. I wrote about what it felt like to have your ideas stolen, and your grief minimized, and your birthday forgotten. I wrote for 3 hours straight, and when I finished, I reread it and thought, this is the truest thing I've ever written. Then, and I still don't fully understand why I did this, I posted it online. I woke up the next morning to hundreds of notifications. By the end of the week, it was thousands. Comments from women all over the country, all over the world, saying, this is my life. This is exactly my life. How did you know? Women who were the invisible daughter, the overlooked employee, the woman whose pain was always somehow her own fault. Women who had spent decades making themselves smaller and were exhausted and didn't have words for it until they read mine. I read every single comment. I cried over most of them, not out of sadness, out of recognition. The specific, overwhelming relief of recognizing that you are not alone in your particular kind of pain.
I want to tell you about the moment things truly changed. Because it wasn't the post going viral, though that mattered. It wasn't confronting Derek, though that felt extraordinary. It wasn't even the phone call with my mom, though that cracked something open I hadn't been able to crack in 32 years. The moment things changed was quieter than any of that. It was a Tuesday morning, maybe 6 weeks after everything started unraveling and remaking itself. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee, and the sun was coming through the window at this particular angle, warm and sideways and golden, and I realized I was content. Not happy in the performing sense, not performing calm, just genuinely, quietly at peace in the space of my own company. I thought about the girl at that dinner table who started a sentence and never finished it. I thought about the woman in that hallway with a cereal bowl, watching someone else receive flowers on her birthday. And I thought, she deserved so much better. She always did. That's the thing about spending your life invisible. You start to believe the invisibility is a quality of yourself, like eye color or height. You start to believe that you simply are the kind of person who gets overlooked, the way some people are simply unlucky, or simply ordinary, or simply not quite enough. But invisibility isn't a quality, it's a dynamic. It requires the active participation of every person who looked at you and chose not to see you. The parents who turned away, the boss who took and gave nothing, the partner who chose someone else and called it complicated. They made me invisible, and only I could make myself seen. I left the marketing firm 4 months later, not dramatically. No scenes, no HR complaint, no public reckoning, though the conversation with Derek had consequences I'd carefully set in motion, and by the time I resigned, there were other women who'd come forward with their own documented patterns. I left because I had built something of my own, quietly and after midnight, that was beginning to support me. The newsletter grew, then a podcast, then a book deal, from an editor at a publishing house in New York who emailed me on a rainy Wednesday and said, I want to publish your story. I want people to have this. I sat with that email for a long time before I responded. I want people to have this. Someone wanted to give people something I'd made. Someone thought what I created was worth having. I called Renee that night. My sister and I had never been close,
Not because we didn't love each other, but because the structure of our family had made us into competitors without our consent, and we were both only beginning to understand that. I called her and I told her what was happening. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Kara, I didn't know you could write like that." "I know," I said. "Nobody did." "I didn't know a lot of things about you," she said, and her voice was different than it usually was. Softer, uncertain, genuinely sorry. "Me neither," I said. We talked for 2 hours. It was the longest conversation we'd ever had.
My mother and I have a different relationship now. It's careful and honest in a way it never was before. We have had hard conversations that didn't end cleanly, where we both said things that stung and then sat in the sting instead of papering over it. She has not become the mother I always wanted. I am learning to grieve that and also to accept what she can actually offer, which is more than I once gave her credit for. She called me on my birthday this year. Early morning, before I'd even had coffee, she just called. "Happy birthday, baby," she said. Her voice sounded old and a little uncertain, like she was practicing something, like she was trying. "Thanks, Mom," I said. It wasn't a movie moment. There were no tears, no grand declarations, no full circle healing. It was just a phone call, a simple, ordinary phone call on the right day. But after I hung up, I sat for a while in the quiet of my apartment, which has plants now, and soft rugs, and shelves of books, and light. And I felt something I can only describe as wholeness. Not completeness, not the absence of pain or longing or the occasional ache of old grief, but wholeness, the particular wholeness of a person who has decided, after a long time of running from herself, to come home. I think about that little girl a lot, the one at the dinner table with an unfinished sentence, the one who helped her brother win a science fair and stood in the back while he accepted the ribbon, the one who learned to be quiet and easy and small, because that was the rent she was charged for existing in her own family. I want to say something to her and to anyone who recognizes themselves in her. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were never the wrong one, or the medium one, or the forgettable one. Those were stories told to you by people who were either too small themselves to hold your light, or too distracted by their own wounds to notice yours. Your invisibility was never the truth of you. It was the distance between who you are and who others were capable of seeing. And here's what I know now, at 32, sitting in the light of my own making. The moment you stop waiting to be seen by the people who never could, that is the moment you become, finally and completely, visible to yourself. That is the only visibility that was ever going to save you. And darling, it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. If you like this story of mine, please leave a nice comment and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.